Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special episode of Facet Nation, a Gemology podcast. As always, I am Lucinda.
And I'm Simon.
And today we are no longer alone. We are doing our first ever interview. This was so exciting for me, and I think remains like one of the most inspiring chats I've ever had with anyone within this industry. We are talking today to an incredibly talented lapidary gemologist, like gem genius, would you say, Simon?
Precision gem cutter, I think, is how he likes to be referred to, which I think is more than accurate.
Agreed. And super impressive guy, and one of the founding members of my favorite subreddit, Shiny Precious Gems. Today we are talking to Arya about all things gemmy with a tight focus, I would say, on video game gems. It's a really fascinating chat. If you are a gamer like myself and like Simon once upon a time, I think you'll really find it enlightening, inspiring, and it's a great window into all the places that this industry can take you, don't you think, Simon?
Well, actually, I also want to say that even if you're not a gamer, which I am not really, then there's some like just the cutting of gems that he's doing and the cuts that he's invented are like absolutely unreal. So,
and you may have actually seen some of them around, even if you're not into games or anything like that. Really stunning cuts.
You probably have seen them about and been like, oh, that looks nice. So all of the, all of those sort of fancy cuts and new ways of cutting gems. He was one of the pioneers of that and sort of getting it into the mainstream and sort of thinking differently about how you cut gems. A lot of the people that you maybe have heard of have crossed his path over the years. So yeah, really, really, really interesting chat that we had with him, and you're about to listen to it.
So enjoy, be inspired, and we will see you at the end of the episode.
Enjoy.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Facet Nation. I'm Lucinda. We're here with Simon and our special guest today, Arya Akhavan, who is such an exciting member of the gemology community, an amazing lapidary, a gem cutter with loads of published cuts to his name, and also doing some very exciting things in terms of synthesizing synthetics. Today, we're going a little bit off-piste. We're going to be talking about video game jewelry, and Arya is would you say founder or the innovator behind the Rupee Cut?
Yeah. So that was one of the first gemstone designs that I ever did. I think back in maybe 2010. I'm the first person to ever publish any kind of video game themed gemstone designs. And like until then, the gemology industry had really been dominated by folks in their 60s and up. So there weren't really any gamers, but it's been very nice to see that, you introduce one or two gemstones themed after video games, and you put them out on social media, and then now all of these younger designers are doing much more interesting things with them.
And there's so much, amazing gemstones, amazing pieces of jewelry, and we're going to be digging into all of that today. So Arya, to kick things off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? So how did your gemstone journey begin?
Yeah, sure. So I actually started gem cutting in about 2010. I was doing university down at Arizona State University, and they had a partnership with the Mining and Mineral Museum. So you could take a summer course for lab credits. So I took a 2-credit lab course over the summer holidays on gemstone cutting. I had seen like gems in video games and things like that. And I was like, oh yeah, this is fun. I had a rock collection as a kid. And I was like, okay, well, so I'll just take this course credit. And it turned out to be a lot of fun. But, at that point, especially for modern style gem cutting, everything was a trade secret. Nobody had really published anything. Nobody was really putting information out there like readily available. And people were holding things very close to the chest. So I was like, well, I'm going to put together a bunch of videos to teach people how to gem cut. I'm going to put them out online for free. I'm going to write a whole bunch of gemstone designs, put those out for free, like do a bunch of resources. And hopefully, we can, instead of having this field where everybody is, over the age of 60 and retiring, maybe we can like start a new wave of gem cutters bringing interesting innovation and things. So
that's so nice to,
cool.
To hear. You're sort of talking our own language here, because like we're trying to make gemology a bit more interesting, a bit more
More accessible, I think, as
more
well.
accessible, exactly. Yeah, and just trying to make it a bit less stuffy. So that's really cool to hear. How long did you actually study for, or is it, or were you just sort of started studying and then kind of like go off on your own and try and perfect it individually?
Yeah. So, I got the existing educational materials that existed at that point, which hadn't been updated since the 60s. So I got the Vargas books, which were horrifyingly outdated. I got the Broadfoot and Collins, which was published in, I believe, 1990. And I tried to find stuff online. So that was a terrible experience. So I didn't really study any of that. I took the course, which was really, I had no information on like optics or principles of gemstone design or anything like that. It was just entirely the mechanics of the act of gem cutting. And so, I got the skills that I needed. I think it was 12 2-hour blocks of time. So I got the mechanical skills that I needed, but then to figure out the like gemstone design principles or optics, or like how do you select the design you're using, that was entirely learning stuff from first principles, looking at like like Snell's law equation for like how light moves through the stone, or trying to find any published scientific literature about like how refractive index changes like across different gem materials or things like that. So there was a huge amount of self-study from scientific literature that I had to do, and nearly no what I would call like proper study where you've got a course that you can take. That just didn't really exist for gem cutting.
Do they
Was there
exist now?
Kind of. Justin Prim is a good friend of mine. He's a gentleman out in France who does a lot of gemstone education. I think his course is more geared towards classic gem cutting, doesn't really include a lot of the like optical principles of gemstone design or things like that. The book that we're working on right now, which is literally just principles of gemstone design, hasn't been published yet. It's a kind of a slog to try and convert that to something that's easily accessible and understandable. But there's really not any kind of structured course right now that goes through both the mechanics of gem cutting, the decision making, the optical principles, and all that kind of stuff comprehensively. The only book that does a really good job of that right now is Amateur Gemstone Cutting by Tom Hurst. And that's kind of what is now considered to be the core textbook of gem cutting. But even that, it's more of a beginner like introductory text.
what there is this amazing. Oh, go on, Simon.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, do we have enough gem cutters around? Are you like actively trying to find more? Yeah,
I mean,
because most of it happens in Thailand, right?
So I think that's a common
Germany.
perception. So there is a large amount of what we call, I guess, depending on who calls it, like commercial cutting or factory cutting that happens in Sri Lanka, in India, in Thailand, and that you basically have a large number of people who aren't really trained on optical principles. They know the mechanics of gem cutting and general ideas of how gems are laid out, but because they're being paid for the total finished number of carats, they're cutting things just kind of haphazardly, asymmetrically to try and maximize the weight, and that loses out on a lot of color and things like that. When we talk about modern gem cutting, so like precision gem cutting, people doing things using appropriate angles, appropriate design techniques, ways to optimize color or special effects in gemstones, that is where we're seeing a lot of growth. So we're seeing a lot of new cutters in North America, so US, Canada, Mexico. We're seeing a lot of new cutters in Western Europe. We're seeing a lot in the East African community, which has been really nice to see. So some of the work that's coming out of, let's say, Tanzania is extremely high quality, like very modern design, appropriate optical principles, getting really good performance out of, gems that don't usually perform well. And out of Japan. So all of that's been interesting. See, I think the estimate was about, from one of the equipment manufacturers, was about 10,000 new cutters over the past 20 years.
That's amazing.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
Mind you, we have no idea if they'd like still cut or if it was just like a hobby.
Yeah.
But it's good numbers, and you can definitely see from social media trends that the this side of the industry is expanding very nicely.
Yeah, like Justin does a good job of putting himself out there, and like he does a lot of stuff in the UK as well. We see his name cropping up a lot.
I think from a North American perspective in particular, I mean, I'm on the Reddits all the time, and it's been so cool to see, like, not just the volume of things that are coming across. And like, I started as a shopper, right? So I was just looking for really beautiful stones. And the level of depth and detail and support in those forums is so interesting and amazing. And I feel like that Does that feel like are you guys building a resource intentionally there, or just there
Yeah.
to help each other out?
So good call. So yes, there's a lot of very deliberate community building and resource building going on. Not necessarily just from a like expanding a client base. Like with the Shiny Precious Gems consortium that we have on Reddit, we all got together and we were like, yes, let's very aggressively build a community, like keep things engaging, do a lot of education. But it's not just about building resources for like a client base or like educational things. It's also encouraging new people to enter the field because you never know, like when you get new people entering the field, they all come from different backgrounds, different experiences, and you might have somebody come in who has a totally novel idea that nobody's ever thought of. You might see this new trend that's been going on for maybe about 8 years where people will frost lines that divide individual facets. And nobody had ever even thought of that until I believe Sean O'Neill saw a bunch of interesting stuff on Reddit and then designed software that let you easily do that. Or if we're looking at fantasy cuts, people had started doing like concave facets or like cutting slots in gemstones, but nobody really principalized things until very recently when we had a large influx of new people from engineering backgrounds come in and figure out how to use this equipment more effectively.
So cool. I mean, it's
Really
interesting
cool.
because we're here to talk about video game jewelry, and I feel like so I came to Reddit because I get like deeply obsessed with specific video games and nobody wants to talk to me about them. So The Witcher 3, I was talking to so many people about The Witcher 3 that they were like, listen, you've got to leave me the fuck alone. So I went to Reddit. And I feel like I found gemstones the same way. And so, as a gamer and somebody who's so deeply interested and has this beautiful relationship with stones, what, from your perspective, makes them so complementary?
Yeah, that's a very easy question. So we've got the historical idea that gemstones had magic powers, and we've got the idea of gemstones as like a high value item. And then you've got video games where you need some kind of video game currency that's unusual and interesting. It isn't just like dollars or yen or whatever. And you've got video games that involve magic and spellcasting. So it's a very easy, union to say, okay, like in classical European belief, garnets were involved with like crystallized fire or the idea of the hearth. So we'll stick it in this video game. And if you want to cast a fire spell, you have to hold a garnet or something. So we've got kind of those principles. And then obviously, Legend of Zelda, one of the earliest consistent depictions of gemstones in video games, directly used as a currency where the color of the gemstone changes the value. And then the last thing is actually just that gems are easy to pictorialize. It is very easy to put them in a video game, either as pixel art or just like shitty one-off 3D render. So you've got the two very readily accessible applications, and then just the ease of putting them into video games.
I think even they're this, as you say, like this universally understood. I think about Zelda because I think Ocarina of Time is where we were first like, you spend the whole first half of the game obsessed with these three stones, and it's like, oh, the emerald is the forest, and the sapphire is the water, and the ruby. Yeah. But like
Exactly.
as a kid, you're just like, slaps, that is so smart. And like
Mhm.
it just becomes this whole sacred thing, instantly
Yeah.
understandable.
It's funny that you mention the spiritual stones from Ocarina of Time because some of the first gemstone designs that I published that were specifically video game themed or video game designed or recreations of those. Nobody else had published them. Nobody else had like even thought to do that. And of course, video game nerd who loves gems, the first thing that came to mind is I'm going to make a rupee from Zelda. I'm going to make a Triforce from Zelda, and I'm going to make the spiritual stones from Ocarina of Time.
Hell
So those were
yes.
the first gemstone designs that I ever published. I actually cut a suite of the spiritual stone from Cobalt Spinel for the blue, from Lab Grown Emerald for the emerald, and then from Lab Ruby for the ruby. Like posted that on Reddit, I think a couple of years ago when one of the new Zelda games was coming out. So that was bring it full circle back to the video games that started it.
My 9-year-old heart would have exploded. I remember sitting there being like, which would be my engagement ring?
People have done them in jewelry now too. Like the jewelry that people design. Like I believe there's a part in Ocarina of Time where you can like go and you see the stones kind of just like rotating and they're set in little settings. And those settings, especially with modern CAD software for jewelry design, are very easy to recreate. Yeah.
And so when you looked at the spirit stones or you looked at the rupee and you wanted to turn it into something real, what is that process like? Where do you even start taking this digital thing, you can do anything in pixels. How do you start conceptualizing how to make it real?
Yeah, because I was sorry. I was reading that. I don't know if it was something that you'd written but I was reading that because it's quite a flat stone, isn't it, in the game?
Yeah.
That's not doing the gem any favors if you're just sort of cutting it like that, like like a portrait cut or something like that. You're going to see straight through it. So yeah, I suppose making it look at its best, it was part of the process.
Yeah. So Simon, that's actually a really good point. In Zelda, they're flat, they're portrait cuts. And they're very thin portrait cuts too. So you would see through it. You would lose all of the color. It would be like very uninteresting. So some of the challenge was, okay, what outline of the stone am I going to use? The longer and narrower a gemstone's outline is, the more challenging it is to get to perform well. So I basically just went through the games and I was like, okay, which one of these games do I like the shape the best from? And I'll use that as the outline. And then the other question was, do I keep the very simple appearance of the top, which is in the video games, it's just a simple step cut with one step. That's very uninteresting. It doesn't really add a lot of optical interest. So it was figuring out, okay, how do I change that so that it's still very recognizably the shape of a rupee, but still actually like performs as a gemstone? And then the more challenging question is, what the hell do I put on the bottom of it so that it's not a portrait cut, so that it still like returns the color that I want? And with CAD software now, with the GemCut Studio, that's very easy to do. But in 2010, all we had was GemCAD, which was originally like DOS software from like 1980. And that was a very challenging piece of software to use and required a lot of trial and error. But you can use your basic design principles for longer stones and figure out, okay, I can't have a traditional culet that comes to a sharp point. I need a keel that runs across the length of the stone. And then it's like, okay, how do I engineer the pavilion so that the outline is reproducible? You can stick facets wherever you want, but the only way to predictably reproduce a gem's outline without very like precise pain in the ass caliper measurements is using principles of meet points. But as long as you use those principles, and as long as you're a modern gem cutter who like knows modern techniques and can do all of that, you can create a design that anybody can reproduce the exact same outline, the exact same effects. So
that goes on the software, and you basically like these meet points are plotted out and then anybody can sort of meet the meet points if you like. Is that right?
Exactly. As long as the designer knows what they're doing, you basically use areas that facets come together as little like points in space. And as long as you know where those points are, that tells you where to put other facets. And so a modern gem cutter can just read a diagram and look at the like you look at the picture of the stone from 4 different views, you look at the numbers and angles that are provided, and you can just kind of walk through that and be like, okay, I understand how everything comes together. Like I can do this on my own.
Interesting.
That's
now I'm just conscious that some people, Simon possibly included, doesn't actually know what a rupee from Zelda looks like. So let's dial it back. So Arya, from your perspective, what makes a rupee cut? What is a rupee, and what are the kind of fundamental characteristics of a rupee cut, shall we say?
Yeah, that's an important thing to kind of.
Do you know what a rupee cut is, or a rupee is, Simon? Have you seen one? Okay, good.
I actually also researched what the modern day monetary equivalent would be. So if anybody's interested in that, I've got that information up my sleeve.
Save that for the end, babe.
Yeah, okay, fine.
Yeah, so, there was a historical gemstone shape, I believe it was the Duchess, that is basically just, you take a hexagon, you grab 2 points that are opposite from each other, and you stretch the gemstone. A rupee is a very specific type of Duchess cut. So you start with, just a normal hexagon, like all 6 sides totally straight, totally even. You don't grab the points and stretch them because that would kind of change the little tip that you have. It would like take a narrow tip and kind of squeeze it out. You maintain that angle, and then your little side walls, you just kind of stretch those. So what you end up is basically an elongated hexagon. And that's just, that's all a rupee is. It's an elongated hexagon where the length has a certain subset of appropriate lengths, and the like angle of the tip is within a certain range. That's all it is.
Pointy long boy.
Pointy long boy. It can be problematic when you're setting them or when you're cutting them. Those sharp tips can chip sometimes.
Yeah, I was trying to think of another that is something to sort of describe it, to liken it to, but there is nothing really that kind of looks like that kind of
Not
thing.
It's like a
really.
more geometric marquise.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a marquee with straight sides almost.
Yeah.
And how long did you spend developing this? Was it kind of a plotted in experiment in the CAD and you're good to go? Or was it getting rough, faceting, fucking up? Like, what was that process like?
No, thankfully it was
Because that gets expensive fast.
So having done design work for a while, I was basically like, okay, I have the outline. I want to make the outline. I'm gonna like render it and just continue working on it until it looks good and until design principles say it should perform well. And I'll do one test cut. That's all I thought I would need. That was all I needed. I tested it out in a piece of Peridot, and it turned out almost exactly as I had predicted. And I was like, okay, great. Good to go.
Justice for Peridot. I'm sure your talent was part of it, but also shout out. Nobody loves Peridot but me. I don't even love it. I just feel sad for it.
The most readily available good green.
Right?
Yeah, that's true.
There's a lot of Peridot haters in this world.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
So speaking of which, what material really lends itself to this kind of cut specifically? And then more broadly, do you find yourself kind of matching cuts in your mind to material, or is it a more organic process than that?
Yeah, so that's a good question from two different perspectives. So if you're asking what material lends itself to a Rupee cut, there's just what material generally, and then what material comes in shapes that make it worthwhile to do. So if we just look at shapes, any gemstone that comes as a long prismatic shape. So we'll say like tourmaline comes in long triangular prisms. Beryl comes in long hexagonal prisms. Honestly, zircon, if you get a double terminated zircon, those are square prisms with like nice pyramids on either end. That is actually the perfect shape for like
Most
One
of
of
the way there,
Simon's
I guess.
favorites.
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Loves a metamic zircon, this
I
guy.
love a metamic zircon, the decaying ones.
Okay, so you like rotten zircon, but that's fine.
Yeah.
But no, so shapes like that tend to be the best proportion for good yield if you're doing a Rupee from the perspective of like optics and color and all that kind of stuff. Generally, gems in the mid-range refractive index, so from about like 165, let's say Peridot, to about 190. So like spessartite or zircon, anything that falls in that range will have good optical performance. And as long as the color is saturated enough, it'll represent that color very appropriately.
Nice. A spessartite rupee.
Yeah, that sounds nice, doesn't it?
That sounds so nice.
Very nice orange. The question is, can you find one that's big enough and shaped appropriately?
I was
Where
going to
there's
say,
a will, there's a way.
The price is going up on them, so yeah, maybe.
And is there any material that's just absolute disaster?
Yes.
Like, don't go there, girl. Which
100%.
Who's on off the list?
So any quartz,
No.
they come in hexagonal prisms or they come in triangular prisms. So you'd think that they would be really well shaped for yield, but the refractive index is just too low.
Too low, yeah.
No matter what you do, there's always going to be some amount of tilt windowing and color loss. The other one that I've actually tried thinking it would turn out really well and really just did not was iolite. It's very, very strongly trichromatic. So you've got the like white direction, you've got the like light medium blue direction, and you've got the purple direction. And so when I did that, it turned out really nicely. The colors were completely separated. You could see like white in one direction, dark blue purple in the other, but the refractive index is so low that as soon as you tilt the stone, it windows, and there's no way to get around that.
Nothing breaks my heart like a window.
And you can't adjust, and then it's not worth adjusting the cut. It then becomes difficult to sort of do anything with, I suppose.
Well, so there's not, it's a good way to put this. When we look at like designs and the refractive index of a gem material, the RI gives us kind of like what we call a performance envelope. There's a certain range of angles that will work. The lower the refractive index, the narrower that envelope becomes. And for some designs, for some outlines, there's a point where that window closes. Like there is no performance envelope. You cannot physically produce a gemstone that will perform. And iolite's just in that range.
It's so interesting to put it in numbers like that. Like it intellectually makes so much sense, but in my heart, I'd be like, give her a chance. It's not going to happen for iolite.
I knew it was going to turn out poorly. I knew that ahead of time. I knew that going in, and I was like, I still want to do it. And as soon as I finished it, I was like, fuck, I regret it.
So, I mean, we love a bit of pleocroism at Facet Nation, so I would love to see it anyway.
Nice.
I bet it looked amazing. But also shit.
It's amazing.
In one specific view, it looked great.
Yeah. Yeah, you could only wear it like like this with your hand.
You can only look at it with one eye. If you open both eyes, it goes
Yeah.
circle. You look at it straight down in exactly the right lighting, and it's beautiful. And you look at it any other way.
Yeah, perfect. Like mount
That's
it
why I
on the
like
wall.
all my stones. So we've touched on the difficulty of faceting and also touched a little bit on how rupee cuts in particular can be challenging. How do you like to see them set and worn? I imagine that pointy edge causes some problems.
Yeah. So the problem with any of these pointy designs is, the risk of chipping or snagging. So unless you have a jeweler who is very skilled at not knocking the ends off, what people typically do is they'll set it in a pendant or in earrings, such that the four corner, like not the two sharp ends, but the four corners of the rupee are where the set it, like where the prongs are or whatever. I do know some folks who will do bezels. I personally think that's a little bit risky, especially in more brittle materials. But if you're doing like a lab sapphire or something like that, sure, you can like hog on that however you want, put it in a bezel, sure. But yeah, just if you're wearing it as a ring, you want to protect those two sharp ends so that you're not snagging, you're not chipping, or you're not stabbing yourself.
That's true.
Some of these, well, Simon, I'm not even kidding. Some of these sharper designs, like I have in fact stabbed my fingertips and like drawn blood on a rupee before. It was like an 8-carat blue zircon. It was very painful. I regret doing that.
Yeah.
It's the thing. You
So
don't want to.
are you advocating like a V claw over that tip?
Yeah, if you're using it as a ring, I would probably use honestly, I would use 24 karat gold just so you don't run the risk. Yeah. Just anything to protect that if you're setting it as a ring. If it's a pendant or an earring, it doesn't matter. Like you don't need to. You're not going to stab anything. I guess if you're wearing certain clothes with like a long chain, you might it might get caught up on stuff. That's really up to the person who wants to wear it.
Is it challenging to let? Oh, go on, Simon.
No, carry on.
Is it challenging to let go of the fate of stones that you have cut? Like you sell them. Do you wish the best for them? Do you ever wonder how they're doing?
I have bought stones back from people before because I was sad that I let go of them. Yeah. It happens. Generally when I sell something, I'm like, yeah, I'm very happy with this. It's not something that I want to keep in my collection. I'm totally happy to send it off into the world so somebody else can enjoy it. I thankfully haven't run into the issue where somebody's taken a stone that I've cut and they were like, well, I bought it. I like the color or whatever, but I want it recut. I think that is generally a pretty big faux pas for clients. And most of the people in the precision gem cutting community will not take somebody else's work and recut it unless it's for repairs or something. But yeah, I usually don't have trouble cutting something and sending it off into the world, usually.
So so you're basically saving that gem from being mistreated, like a poorly treated.
Puppy.
No, exactly, yeah, a rescue puppy.
Like a rescue.
Oh, sorry, I need that one back. You're not looking after it correctly.
Yeah, I think the most recent one that I had brought back was an iolite that I cut into a hexagon that had a perfect separation of the white zones, the blue zones, and the purple zones. And after I think 3 or 4 months, I was like, fuck, I really want to I want to put that in my collection. So I reached out to the buyer, and she was very willing to accommodate, which was nice.
She didn't hold you to ransom then.
Just refund, and I paid for shipping, and I was like, okay, great, this is staying in my collection.
That's amazing. The thing I was going to ask was, what's the biggest one you've cut?
I cut I believe it was a 35 millimeter, 300 carat cubic zirconia, a very aggressive orange color, like an eyeball searing orange in a heptagon, a custom heptagon for a mentor of mine from the medical industry. But yeah, that's the biggest one I've cut so far. I don't have as much fun cutting giant stones as I think I used to, but as long as it's something interesting or a cool material and it's not sapphire moissanite, have a lot of fun with that. I've cut fist-sized synthetic rutile before, and with the highest dispersion you can get out of any gemstone, that thing just kind of vomited rainbows everywhere. That was super cool.
Wow. I bet that was sick to
Yeah,
pull
I bet
out.
that was sick too.
Yeah, a lot of fun to do stuff like that. But it takes stamina, and there's some reward that you get after seeing a stone be finished. And when a stone takes 40 hours to do, you're like, okay, I'm kind of done with it.
Yeah, diminishing returns on that one.
Yeah, definitely.
So in terms of the kind of video game specific stuff, we've talked about the Rupee Cuts, we've talked about the Spirit Stones. Is there anything else in your portfolio that you found particularly inspiring or exciting that you've cut?
Well, that's a good question. So there is a design that I wrote, one of the earlier designs that I wrote that seems to have been like A, it's one of my favorite designs, but B, I think the majority of the cutting industry also agrees that it's their favorite design. It's a square with the corners cut off. It's titled Void Reaver because that, of course, is a World of Warcraft reference.
I've seen this. I've seen this cut. Yeah.
But that is the one cut that I have that I am always happy to cut. Just like if I want to break from cutting challenging stuff, or if I want to like cut a new material, I'm like, I'm doing this. Like, because of course, it's the only design of mine that gets consistently like IP thefted. Like the only scenario where I've had to enforce intellectual property law on.
Oh, wow.
You know, like when Chinese manufacturers take the design and they start mass production, or when people like cut a lot of it and then start putting it on social media and not cite me as the author, which, you know, part of the terms and agreement of using my designs is that you always reference me as the author and the title of the design, which people fail to do pretty often. But, you know,
That's so shocking. It's like this have you seen it, Simon?
No.
You can Google it now and pull it up. It
Yeah,
is
I'm going to.
incredible. And I think one of the really cool things about it is it's actually an accessible design. Like somebody who doesn't understand gemstones can look at it and be like, that's fucking cool. Like the way the light returns and the color, like it's very cool.
Yeah, it's also, you know, kind of adaptable in that I took that design template and I did it across like trillions and like pentagons and like hexagons and, you know, other kind of outlines. And regardless of how you do it, that it just always performs really well and it always looks super cool.
It's so cool.
I have seen it. It's amazing. Like amazing.
Yeah. I think, you know, that's one of the big ones that I'm very proud of. And then there's also a series of designs for brand new gem cutters that kind of walks people through more and more advanced gemstone designs. So like, you know, each subsequent design in that series adds one or two new features of gem cutting that you would have to learn at some point. But because it's a very slow gradiated progression across 9 designs, all a newbie has to do is just run through that and then they're good to go. Historically, people were always like, oh, you have to cut 30 standard round brilliants back to back before you can cut anything else. And I was like, this is really stupid. A, like, it's a little bit more challenging for a beginner. Like, give them something easier to start with.
Yeah,
but also, B, like, once you've done it once or twice, you understand the mechanics of it. Like,
you don't like it's boring, right? Like it's the slog as opposed to learning something new and building on that experience.
Well, I suppose that's sort of like trying to stunt people's creativity as well. Like this is how this is done. This is how you have to do it, and you have to do it over and over again. It's not making it sound very glamorous, is it?
No, it's not fun, and it kind of stifles innovation, to be honest. Like if you say, here is what a gem must look like, and like here is what the prototype gem must be, like it takes some of the fun out of it.
For sure. Yeah, definitely.
And how have you seen demand for and interest in video game cuts, but also these kind of more innovative cuts that you guys have been pioneering? How has that changed over your time in the industry?
Massively, absolutely massively. And I think a big contributor of that is probably the very aggressive, you know, like social media promotion that a lot of us have been doing, like the educational efforts, the social media communications and all that kind of stuff starting from about 2015 onwards. So up until like, I think 2012, 2015, really the field was heavily dominated by older men, like 60s and above. Not a lot of innovation, not a lot of new interest, not a lot of stuff like that. Cohort of us kind of got together and we were like, okay, we really need to like start pushing boundaries, like increasing innovation, all that kind of stuff. And what we ended up seeing, and really like once COVID started and everybody was on lockdown, we really, really saw it, was what we kind of call the second renaissance of modern gem cutting. So you see a lot more new cutters becoming rapidly successful. We see a lot more people switching from, you know, like classical design technique, which, you know, to be totally honest, is kind of shit. But we see a lot of people switching from that to modern techniques, even for higher value stones like sapphire. I mean, we see the rise of, let's say, Earth's Treasury, which converted the traditional idea that, oh, you have to like use all these traditional old school appearance and things like that to, okay, like we've modernized the entire Montana sapphire industry.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff's a good friend of mine, and seeing him go from like when he was a new cutter to having expanded and now like being the Montana Sapphire group, where the overwhelming majority of their stuff is done with like modern, interesting like techniques and designs. And then, we're also seeing, especially from the video game side of things, a lot of gamers have like the era that grew up with the NES or the Super Nintendo or the N64 and PlayStation are now at the stage where they're in careers, they have disposable income, and they want video game related merch.
And they want nice stuff
And they
too.
want nice stuff. It's not just that they want like cheap plastic, like whatever, which they do, and that's totally fine. But there are a lot of people doing engagement rings, wedding rings that are very high end in like the 4 or 5 figures that are video game themed. I had somebody commission, I actually had 3 people now, commission large cubic zirconia with the green to purple color change in StarCraft themed stuff, like based around the Zerg, because that is the color scheme of the Zerg.
Hmm.
And these folks want like very high end, very like luxury design jewelry that features these hyper modern cuts in like very unusual materials. So we're seeing a big growth in that. And then, every time, of course, there's a new Zelda release, everybody's like, I want rupees, I want this and that.
Yeah.
Actually, I can't talk about that. So there's something that we're working about that I think is still technically under a an NDA, but
Okay.
We'll come back
yeah,
to you.
we'll come back to that in like summer or something.
Okay. Yeah. Fine. But
Just
no,
writing that
what
down in my calendar.
such a great storyteller. You've set us a cliffhanger right there. That's the teaser for your return.
Yeah,
Absolutely brilliant stuff.
yeah. I mean,
Also, and is there anything you've seen lately on the docket that you're like desperate to crack that you're working on now that is not under NDA?
Not one that
so
isn't under NDA. No.
I think the big one is, like Surgical Precision Gems also does a lot of gemological research. And there's a lot of really high end research going on in crystallography, in diamonds, in like crystal engineering, things like that. But the gemological world has just not adopted. We're still like in gemology, we're still like 20, 30 years behind. And people just haven't adopted this new stuff. So eventually, like me and some of my PhD buddies got really annoyed with the field of sapphire research and like, well, to hell with this. Like, we'll just do it ourselves. We'll grow we'll get all the crystal growth equipment. We'll grow it ourselves. We'll study it ourselves. We found some really good partners at GIA, and we found some really good partners who are like historic figures in sapphire research. And we're like, okay, we'll do Kickstarter. Like, I think got almost 500% of our original goal, got a bunch of equipment. We've got like the lab being built out in Turkey. So now we're just, once we actually start the growth using like supercomputers and all that kind of stuff to run predictions, we think we can crack essentially 100% of everything there is to know about sapphire. What does every single element do in terms of color, in terms of
Color
properties?
causing, yeah.
What is every single possible heat treatment for every single possible combination of elements? And then like the long-term thing is, if we have a natural sapphire that we just like pick up and it's polished and whatever, can we predict accurately and consistently what's going to happen to that if we heat treat it under these conditions?
Cool.
And I just got some of our preliminary data on Thursday. And, our data, like the supercomputer predictions and the actual like experimental data, were almost a perfect match. So we're like, okay, so if this is working correctly, we're gonna grow every single possible sapphire in some like bizarre colors, and then we're gonna completely overhaul the field as a whole.
Wow.
So I'm very excited for that.
That's very cool. As somebody cutting gemstones, do you have a preference for working with natural or synthetic, or is it all more about the precision of the cut?
It's really kind of just on a mood basis. Sometimes I'm like, okay, I really don't want to think about yield. I don't want to think about like orientation. I just want a like pick up a block and go. It doesn't matter how much of it I waste. I can just like do cool things. And then sometimes I'm like, you know what? I kind of want to do something where I've got to like think about things, and I got to like plan around and like see how I can maximize yield, and like what kind of design tweaks do I need to do here and there. So it really is like mood based. And sometimes you're like, well, I really want this like color and this feature. So like I'm a nut for corner roofing. It's like blue, green, and purple in 3 different directions. It's extremely rare, but it's so rare that I can't play around with it. Like you're almost obligated to do very specific things with an ultra high value material. So we contacted one of the labs that I know down in Thailand, and they started growing forsterite for us, which is like Peridot family.
Yeah.
If you
we had
add
a question
chromium
about that on our exam.
so if you add chromium to forsterite, you get the same thing. I mean, you have to grow it in very narrow conditions, but green, blue, purple, 3 different directions. So now, like, yeah, I can go to my like favorite natural material and like do very rigid things and try to maximize every last little bit of yield I can get while still showing the color effects. Or I can go to a synthetic that I've had custom grown for me.
Yeah.
And
See what
I
you
can just
feel.
do whatever I want and see what happens.
Best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You gotta do it where you can.
Simon, do you have any questions?
No, I don't think I have any additional questions. That's been really cool and really fascinating to hear about, and also really exciting to hear about the things that you're sort of doing too. I'm excited to see what happens, and we must have you back on so you can at least tell us about the thing that you are not allowed to tell us about.
Oh man, well, we'll plan for that in the summer.
Yeah, and then also to tell us more about how your sapphire research is going, because that is
Definitely.
fascinating.
So amazing.
Yeah, we got invited to give a presentation on that at Tucson, so we'll have some updates then, and then
Cool.
if you guys have me back in the summer, I can talk about both that and the fun NDA stuff.
Amazing, yeah, because there's like a team of you, isn't there? There's four.
I mean, there's a whole bunch of us, but there's for the sapphire stuff. There's myself. There's the Mansour siblings down in Istanbul. There's Stag and Finch up in Manitoba, and there's a couple guys down in Portland.
Nice, a whole crew.
Big crew.
It's always, I love this world because everybody is just, when you find somebody who loves gemstones, everybody is so happy to like chat and collaborate and just do very cool stuff, because nobody gets it like we do they?
Nobody really gets it. And like it's only recently that this has become a thing where everybody's like super chatty and friendly. Like when I started, it was very much a like, fuck off, I'm not telling you anything. But now everybody's like super open and like fun, and everyone wants to chat about everything. It's a much more collaborative environment.
That's
nice.
Really cool.
Arya, is there anything that you'd like to mention that we haven't touched on that you think it's important people know?
Ooh, I don't think so. I can't think of anything offhand.
Anything you want to sell?
Oh, good lord.
What are your socials? How can people find you?
I'm always happy to plug the Shiny Precious Gems consortium on Reddit. Just Shiny Precious Gems. We have our big Black Friday sale.
I wish you hadn't told me about that.
It's dangerous. But yeah, I guess if there's one last thing for me to say, it's a shameless self-promotion plug.
Wonderful.
Well, thanks again for having me on.
No issues with that whatsoever.
Yeah. Please. The people deserve to know.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thanks again for having me on. This is very fun. Always happy to do this. And yeah, I think summer will be a fun time to have another chat.
Okay.
We'll pencil you in.
We'll pencil that in for sure, because we need to know what's going on.
Yeah. So it's very video gamey, Lucinda. You'll appreciate it.
Oh yeah. Can you name a franchise? No, you'll get sued.
No, I can't.
Okay, fine. We'll just have to wait then. Wait and see.
Exactly.
Well, wasn't that interesting?
So fascinating.
We hope you enjoyed our conversation with Arya. I know I really did, and I am super interested in learning more about his study into the sapphires and like how he's going to basically figure out everything you possibly need to know about Corundum and the causes of color and how you create different colors in Corundum through his research. He's got a Kickstarter. We'll put it on our Instagram because that's going to be like amazing research and going to be so valuable to the industry, I think.
Yes. And everybody, if you have not already, please go to Reddit, follow or join the subreddit Shiny Precious Gems. Highly, highly recommend. And I hope one day we will see Arya in person at Tucson. We're determined to get there by hook or by crook.
Well, that was one of the nicest things about the interview that you had with him, when he was saying he was really trying to sort of develop the community and get people talking amongst themselves about these things. And sharing ideas and sharing just something else I wanted to say was, like, if you're looking for some of his gem cuts, the Rupee Cut is obviously Rupee, and then the Void Reaver, because when he first said it, I didn't know exactly what he'd said. It's worth reiterating that it's a Void, Void, Reaver, Reaver. So yeah,
Which is
look
just
that up,
reminding me,
'cause
so
you've got to look at it.
you teased us with the monetary value of a rupee. What is it?
Oh, yeah, I did. I've got that here. So in 2023,
And this is
Forbes,
specifically a Zelda rupee.
yes, specifically a Zelda rupee. So basically, Forbes did a study into the value of a rupee within the video game. And they basically likened it to what you could buy in the real world versus what you can buy in the Zelda game. 1 rupee, which is what color?
I feel like it's red, but I could be so wrong on that.
I feel like
Someone's
it might be
screaming. Maybe it was blue. Someone's screaming in the comments.
I had that in my notes, to be fair, but I don't have my notes to hand. But anyway, whatever the one that's worth 1 is the equivalent of, well, in 2023 was the equivalent of 62 American cents.
Really?
So there you go. Yeah, so not
actually,
a lot. What can you buy with a rupee in the game? Like a cloak.
like a
Because
deku.
that is living like
You
a king if you buy
cannot buy a
62
cloak
cents.
for 1 rupee. You can buy like a
well,
deku
exactly
nut.
then.
I think you get like a
Okay.
bundle of 5 deku nuts for 5 rupees.
Okay, well there you go. So there you go then. Like a couple of bloody walnuts, 62 cents. It
Deku
stacks
nut
up,
is
doesn't it?
actually a very effective weapon, Simon. I'll have you know.
What do you do with it? Chuck it at people.
You put it in your slingshot.
That
And then
makes
when the
sense.
spiders,
Okay.
they like, and then they turn around and you shoot the skulltulas. You shoot him in the stomach with your
Got
deku
it.
nut.
Anyway, back to Arya. He's having a Black Friday sale. Curiously, he's starting it on Black Friday, which is November the 28th, which is this Friday, and it's going to be running until the 1st of December. So if you want to buy any of his cuts, go on Shiny Precious Gems, the Reddit, and get in touch with one of the Precision Gem Cutters. You can buy one or get one commissioned, and I think you're going to get a good deal over that weekend.
And then write to us and tell us what you got. And nobody buy the Tonga
100%.
garnets, because I'm coming for those.
Pictures. I am keen for him to cut a Speen into a Void Reaver for me, so he's going to try and find the rough, and we're going to make that happen.
Yeah, stay tuned, y'all. Great. We will see
yeah,
you next
so-
week with another exciting dispatch from the world of light and optics.
We'll catch you next week. Thanks for listening.
Bye, guys.
Bye.